Truman had been a surprise choice for vice president. Delegates at the Democratic Presidential Convention of 1944 chose him to be with Roosevelt only after considering several other candidates. Roosevelt and Truman easily defeated their Republican Party opponents, and when Roosevelt died, Truman became president.
Truman lacked the fame, the rich family, and the strong speaking voice of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a much simpler man. He grew up in the central state of Missouri. Truman only studied through high school and some nighttime law school classes. He worked for many years as a farmer and a small businessman, but without much success. Truman had long been interested in politics. When he was almost 40 years old, he finally won several low-level jobs in his home state. By 1934, he was popular enough in the state to be nominated and elected to the United States Senate, and he won re-election 6 years later.
Most Americans, however, knew little about Truman when he became president. They knew he had close ties to the Democratic Party political machine in his home state. But they also had heard that he was a very honest man. They could see that Truman had strongly supported President Roosevelt's New Deal programs. But they could not be sure what kind of president Truman would become.
History gave Truman little time to learn about his new job. In one of his first weeks as president, Truman signed a paper on his desk without reading it completely. Only later did he learn that his signing the paper had stopped the shipment of American goods to Britain under the Lend-Lease program. Truman's mistake caused problems for people in both the United States and Britain, but it also taught the new president how much power he now had and how carefully he must use it.
The most important power he now possessed was the power of atomic weapons, and soon after he became president, he faced the decision to use that terrible power or not. Truman understood the tragic importance of using atomic bombs to end World War II. Yet he firmly believed that using such bombs was the only way to force Japan to surrender. So, in August 1945, he gave the orders to drop atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war in Europe had ended several months earlier. Truman met in Potsdam, Germany, with British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin to plan the peace. The three leaders agreed that their nations and France would occupy Germany jointly.